Hey, it's Nicole. I'm back again with a Truth of You podcast tutorial number 2. And today I have a very, very special guest. Miaja Liisa Adams is here with me today to give us some tips and tricks about how to be a podcaster and speaking clearly to the audience and getting them engaged. So let's see what she has to say, and welcome, Miaja Liisa. Hey, Miaja Liisa, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks so much for having me, Nicole.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure as usual. Miaja Liisa is a very talented lady. I can't tell you enough good stuff about her. She has 4 children, brought up 4 children very happily. She's a TEDx coach, as well as a teacher of TEDx, not TEDx talks, but talking, public speaking of all kinds at Brigham Young University. And now we have her here, which I'm so excited about. Thanks for joining me. How long have, wait, she has to tell you some really exciting thoughts that she had about her more recent trips to Ireland and India.
Well, in 2022, I had the privilege to speak at 2 really cool places. One was in May. I was at a castle in Ireland with a group of people, and that was pretty cool to speak at a castle and to be there with the nobility, so to speak. And it was fun to also get an award while I was there. Well, first I was thrilled because I got to coach the other speakers in addition to coach. So it was so rewarding not to speak myself, but to also see how far they had come in their preparation of their one idea to share. It was not a TEDx event, but we did a TED style speaking approach in our message to the audience. And I got to be nominated by the peers that spoke with me as the Business Owner of the Year. So that was really cool. And then a few months later, I was contacted because I helped TEDx speakers. They were looking for possible TEDx speakers who would want to do something else beyond, maybe 10x their experience. And so I helped put together a group that went to India and then was asked to speep there as well.
That was so exciting!
Well, and there was a few more people that I spoke to in India than I did anywhere else. I don't know how many people can say that they've spoken to over 500,000 people at the same time.
That's what's so mind-blowing about your experience. When I saw
do you want me to give you the link to I have a little tiny, just a few second clip I could put, you could pop in the chat.
Absolutely.
Okay,
where do I go?
You go to, let's see. Do I go to here? I guess right there. If it goes in the chat, then everybody can see it right there.
Yes. Oh, good. You found it. Okay, yes. So you should be, you sent it to me privately, but I'm going to.
Okay.
That's okay. That's fine. You know what? I'm going to copy it. That's all.
Great.
And then you'll all have the benefit.
Yes, you'll all get to see it. And what I loved about being in India was in that little area in central India, they're like wondering, why are you here? And you don't look like us. And they all wanted to have a selfie with us. And so there was a time where all these young adults kind of took their hands and protected people from kind of mobbing us.
Wow.
And so we didn't even have our cell phones. Like, they wanted to have selfies. So it was all about the catch the moment, not in a bad way or anything, but they just wanted to, like, wow, someone's here. They'll probably never come here again. And this one woman, she kept trying to get in to me, and they said, ma'am, you have to stay out. And she said, but I know she'll only be here this one time. And as we walked from their ashram out to this other monument that they had before we got in our cars, there was an older man, and I would look over at him and his eyes would just pop open like, she saw me. She acknowledged me. And then I'd look over here and there'd be a group of women, and they were just like, wow, she saw me. And these teenage boys were walking alongside, and I loved it because I knew they spoke English, and I just struck up a conversation. So there were these kids that kept, everyone away from us, but yet we were able to engage with people in a much more authentic way than just a selfie. And so all I had was my eyes and my voice to a degree, and then also my heart. So I'm a big thinker, but I try and sometimes quell my feelings a little bit. By the time I had looked in the older mans, these women, these teenage boys, and these two young elementary age girls walked the whole way till we got to the end. And then they asked very calmly, could we have our picture with you? But as I looked at these people, my heart, I just was bawling. And I asked other speakers too, I said, what was your experience? Like, same thing, like we were actually looking these people in the eye and connecting with humanity like we hadn't before.
Amazing. What an amazing experience. Sincerely, just
Mm,
mind-blowing experience.
was.
Amazing. Well, I mean, how that's you don't just FYI, and I'm sure everyone knows this, but you don't just fall into those opportunities. How long have you been teaching or speaking publicly, Maya
You
Lisa?
know, I fell into coming back to teaching very organically. I had been a university professor. I had worked in Silicon Valley, and then I got the chance to stay home with my family. And then I'm like, hey, they're asked, hey, would you come back and just teach a class for us in public speaking? We know that you gave presentations in the Silicon Valley and so forth. And it was a student who actually told me about TEDx talks, TED Talks in general. And they came and said, Mrs. Adams, do you know about the golden circles? I'm like, no, Reagan, what are the golden circles? And so he explained to me Simon Sinek's talk. And I'm sure most people have seen that one. And it just transformed his life. And that's what, excuse me, a TED or TEDx talk is supposed to do. It's not just there to inspire, but something that you'll implement differently.
Right, right.
And in fact, he shared with me, he said, this Reagan, this student, he said, I focus more on the why now. Like rather than drinking a Coke, I buy a stock in Coke because the why is more important. And I just thought that was just, really, really insightful of him. The really cool thing is that a few years later, he ended up on the TEDx stage and
Ah,
gave his idea about student housing. I had to
excellent.
take a drink.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No problem. No problem. Miley is a very accomplished speaker, and she's worked with a lot of people over the years. How many people do you think that is over the past several?
I've helped put over 100 people on the TEDx stage or help them with their message.
And that's just a TEDx stage. That's not even like presentations for businesses or anything like that. That's just a TEDx stage. She's a genius at it. She's excellent.
Well,
So, what's the biggest mistake people make when they're giving a podcast and they're speaking?
Well, and it's whether it's a podcast or it's running into someone and you want to say something and get their attention, or even a TEDx speaker, the people who give it in person, the people are not going to get up and walk away.
Right.
But it's filmed and it's put on YouTube, and you have like 7 seconds to capture someone.
Right.
And if you don't, they're just going to click and go on to the other. There are thousands of TEDx talks now. This has been televised since the early 2000s. That's when we got to know about it. It actually started clear back in 1984, but not getting someone's attention.
Right. Oh, so how does one go about getting attention, Miaja Liisa?
Well, I was working with a group of students who wanted to talk about historical figures or current figures. And I said, you know what? No one's going to pay attention to what you say, because they're all going to be in the library around each other. And, there's 60 students or something. And I said, the only ones that really care about your talk is going to be your mom and maybe your mom's best friend. And they're like, what? No one cares. And I said, no. And you can't tell them things they already know. I said, so somebody tell me, who's someone you want to talk about? We want to talk about Michael Jordan. I said, oh, okay. So did you know that Michael Jordan used to pour salt into his shoes every night before he went to bed and then pray that he would grow taller? They're like, what? No way. So I had their attention then.
It's so true.
You have to do something. You don't have to talk about all these things that people already know about Michael Jordan. You can do that too and have it on your poster, but get their attention. That's the number one thing is that hook. And then talk about what's in it for them.
Yeah.
We make the mistake as a TEDx speaker thinking, I'm going to get on the TEDx stage and I'm going to become famous and they're going to buy my book and my consulting. Guess what? You cannot promote your book. You cannot promote yourself. This is you freely giving an idea that's worth spreading that will help people anywhere around the world. And so you have to flip your mindset.
I do think that's an important piece to remember. Sometimes I'll cover weight loss in my own podcast, but what I try to cover is the elements that help people lose weight in general. I'm not necessarily promoting and marketing my thing, just that it helps them lose weight in general. And I do think that's a good takeaway, just that one point alone, that when you're doing a podcast, don't always be so focused on you and what you offer, but be focused on what your guest has, or what's going on in the world today and how you can help them manage that or make that better, whatever that is. I love that thought.
Yeah, and my second tip would be actually the first time I coached for an event, a TEDx event, it was 3 weeks before the event when they found me. I'm like, oh, that's not a lot of time. And this one speaker, he came to me and he showed me his presentation. He had like 100 slides. And I'm like, you don't have time. You have 10 minutes. There's no way. But he taught me, I mean, I taught him, it was reciprocal. And then he taught me, his message was about the fact that not only are you doing what's in it for them, but they have to know that it's important to you as well. He was the owner of adoption.org, and he gave
Oh,
an
wow.
example of how he was passionate, how he put it together. But he said, I'm going to tell you this example of, there was this couple that wanted to adopt, and they had met someone locally and gotten permission to get that child. But then they also were on adoption.org and had their profile up. And she called me and she said, I don't know what to do because there's a possibility of us having 2 babies now. And he says, then you'll have twins. That's great. Go for it.
Yeah.
And so why they wanted them was the profile picture.
Wow.
This young couple had a picture of themselves with a dog in it. And the mother, who was also on adoption.org, had been put into foster care system. And the one family that was kind to her had a dog, and she had bonded with that dog. So they were both dog lovers, and she wanted her child to experience that. And so it's what do you have in common that you connect over?
Right.
Then we want to do business. We want to do something with, in this case, give this precious child to a family to raise that it meets more of our values.
What a great example. I do feel that is true. I mean, like, having you on today is only because I've seen you speak somewhere else that I felt comfortable with you. You know,
Yeah.
like your expertise, your knowledge comes across very clearly, and I felt comfortable doing that. But it is true also sometimes when you have a scenario where you don't know your guest, or if you're new at podcasting, you could be, I don't know, have some butterflies or stuck in the headlight, deer in the headlight moment. Like, do you have any advice for those kind of people?
I do. My third tip would be, most people, if they're attending a funeral and there's the person that is deceased, has passed away, and then the speaker, if you're the speaker, most of people, rather than be the speaker, they'd rather be the person in the coffin. They're so anxious about this, the high level of nerves of butterfly. And so we have to think, what is that emotion? And is that nervous emotion similar to another emotion? It is, Nicole, and that emotion is excitement. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So how do we flip it from that nerves of like, I can't be the speaker and eulogize someone or share their history or give any wisdom, to I'm excited to be here with you today. And that simply is, instead of focusing on yourself, are they going to judge me? Will I do a good enough job? Am I going to forget what I'm going to say? Will I have forgotten, is my zipper going to be down? That type of thing. Me, 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 me. It's the same thing I said in the beginning. If you focus on you, it's not a good thing. We get nervous. But if you're excited to be there to share that one idea that's like a gift to them on the Tedx stage, or to share your love about this person, to use the analogy of someone's funeral, then it switches from nerves to excitement. So it's all here. Am I focusing on me being judged, or am I focusing on the gift I have to give? In fact, it is our obligation, if we have something that would help people, to share it with them. But then also share it in a way of what's in it for them, in a way that's clear and concise and compelling.
It's what our Father in heaven had planned for us, that we're supposed to share our gifts and talents so that we can raise everyone up at the same time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also find that if you just go through a checklist, like just nailing down, okay, I have tape to button my shirt with so that it won't fly open at the most inappropriate time. If you eliminate all those anxiety points, it also helps to kind of quell your fears and make you feel more and more forthright, just like you can carry it forward. Also, I just think rehearsing, just getting.
It is. And that would be my fourth point is, this shoe that I poured the salt into, it's actually a very special shoe. And it was given to me not quite a year ago. In March of 2022, I coached a young guy, well, young to me, he's in his 30s. And he had played baseball in high school and in college. And his message was about an experience from high school of playing baseball, very traumatic one. It was about being sexually abused by the team. Wow. And how men are also sexually abused, and we need to talk about it. Well, because that's his topic, and he's actually a baseball coach for high school here as well. I noticed when he was on stage, like at the dress rehearsal, he was not wearing these. But the night of, while I was watching, I'm like, oh, he has some new digs on here.
Yeah.
And they were really nice and they stood out. And then as it was over and I came up to the front of the stage where the other speakers were getting together, he had taken both and he was saying, would you sign these? Would you sign these? Would you sign these? And when I came, he gave me one and said, would you sign this? And I said, sure. So these are the other speakers. And then me as the speaker coach, their signatures. And then he handed me the one that didn't have my signature and said, I want you to have this Air Jordan. They're brand new. They were new editions out last year. And so this is just like, he says, I so value your coaching.
That's so awesome.
But I want to tell you about him. CJ Cranock is his name. And if you wanted to see his, it's called CJ Cranock, and you just put in TEDx or TEDx Rexburg. And it's easy to Google someone who's given a TEDx talk. You just put in TEDx in their name and it typically comes up unless it's.
How do you spell Cranock? I'm sorry, Miaja Liisa.
That's okay. Krainock.
TEDx speaker. Okay.
But if you watch his talk, he never forgets what he's going to say. So we did a lot of coaching first because this is a traumatic experience, helping him dig down deep underneath, like what is appropriate to share. And then at the end of that, I said, now make me a promise that you're going to go see your therapist and a legal person so that you know what so that you can deal with all this stuff coming up again, and that you know what you can and can't say.
Right.
But then when it came to memorizing, he thought of his childhood home and he did mind mapping. And this is a tip anybody can do, is you need to know your message well enough. It's like singing happy birthday. And you can make a little tiny change to it, but you know it's done in a certain order and you're very comfortable doing it. And it's nothing takes the part of practicing.
Right.
But also in that practicing, knowing if you get stuck. Let me pause and put a pin in that and say, I had a client a few years ago, very great. She actually has over 800,000 views.
Wow.
And nobody on YouTube would know that for a full minute, she stopped on stage because she forgot where she was. They're all saying, oh, she's getting emotional. I said, nope, she's forgotten where she is.
Wow.
So you can clip that out from the video editing. So the world doesn't know that.
Right.
But even on stage, there's one slight little pause that you can see, and it's him going back through his map in his mind. So he said, I went to my childhood house because I'm more familiar with that than the house I live in. And like each chunk of his talk, the journey of his talk, went through how he would normally walk through his house.
Oh, wow.
So when he got about to the fourth part into it, he had a brief pause and he just went back. I've been here. Okay, I'm here. Now I know what to say. So he knew exactly what to say in the kitchen, exactly what to say in the living room, exactly what to say in the bedroom, exactly what he's going to say. So you mind map it. It's like knowing happy birthday so well that you can go backwards and forwards and you know exactly where you are. And if you can't remember your whole talk start to finish, I mean, not every single word, but the flow of it. What is the message you want to get across in 10 minutes?
Right.
You're going to get nervous up there again, and you are going to forget, and then you are going to feel judged and so forth. So practice and become so familiar with your talk.
I love the mind mapping idea. I usually chunk things out in terms of like visual pictures in my mind. That's how I am. But I love the mind mapping idea through the house. That's an excellent idea. I mean,
he actually took a sheet of paper and he drew his house and he put the reminders so he could study it that way too, like in an outline format.
That's
awesome.
And
then he had it in his mind as well.
That's a great tip. Really, really great tip. Boy, I love that. Now, in your own estimation, there are a series of tips that you always generate some interest over. I mean, what are the top like 5 or 7 that you love?
Well, when it comes in terms of just speaking in general?
Just speaking in general, because you know what, I think as you start to do more and more podcasts on your own, people see you and they're going to ask you to be their guest on their podcast. You know what I mean? So I think the more rehearsed, the better off you are as a guest and have all those tips. I think you'll get invited on, and isn't that the point, to be invited on each other's stages?
That is the point. So it's knowing what is the purpose of this podcast I've been invited to, and how can I elevate this person and the message that they want to do? How do we truly collaborate? It's like, what's the dog in common, so to speak? And
Right.
then also the host knowing, why do I want to have this person on here? And if for some reason, because of time or you forget or whatever, you still try and make sure what the one thing you wanted to say gets said somehow, even if someone asks you a different question. And even if the guest responds, maybe not quite answering that question, you can still bring it back around to it. So it's really thinking, what's the one thing, that one message you want to get across? I think we try and just blast people with a lot of things. Just bring it down to one idea and
Right.
make sure at some point. I want to talk about Ronald Reagan for a minute because he was such a great communicator. And we've had other presidents like Obama is a great orator as well. But my dad was an ambassador for Reagan. And what I learned from Reagan is that he did things in threes. And what I learned about presidents is they can't know everything about everything. So Reagan would go to an advisor and say, I have this big interview about economics. What are the top three things I need to know?
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter what question was asked, he made sure all of the top three things that were important to the economy were brought in there. And in the group that you and I were with together, Larry would say something very similar, that you need to get your message across when you're being asked to come on TV and represent one side or the other side, that gets said, even if they try and cut you off or do things like that. Like, what's that one thing? And it's something I say when someone's wanting to give a TEDx talk. Yes, you can do more than one TEDx talk, but a TEDx talk is not like a keynote. It's not where you have 45 minutes and I'm going to say these three things. It's like, of those three, which one is the most important?
Right.
And then what do you say in a way that people will get it right then? And just, 5 to 10 minutes is about all you get anymore with the TEDx talk.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what is that one thing you want to get across? And then how do you build it up? And one thing you do is one is come down to that idea, but then everything you say about that one idea should, a story, a statistic, they all point back to that idea. It's that repetition of the idea as well. If
Right.
you want to get that across, instead of trying to give, well, let me give them this point. Let me give this one for seniors. Let me give this one for youth. And let me do this. It gets too confusing.
Yeah. I also like the idea of pointing out the problems that people haven't recognized yet. I just heard
Yeah.
that the other night in another talk, that if you illuminate people from a standpoint where you're not just talking about your thing all the time, but you're talking about their thing, but you identify it correctly and then loop it back to the end and how to resolve that thing. That's so exciting. I'll never forget, my son went to Bryant University, and I think it was the president of the school at the time gave a phenomenal talk, a jaw-dropping, like, whoa, you've been doing this a while kind of talk. And I just kept thinking to myself that, public speaking comes a little more naturally for some and not for others. But with that kind of practice in history, anyone can do any, you know what I mean? Like, you can have any message and bring it across. So
Mhm.
I love that. But I think we can go
Yes.
to your website for more tips like this, can't we?
Yeah. Before we do, so that was like the fifth tip that I give them. The sixth one came to mind, or I was going to mention because you mentioned your son and the president, and that is, you speak about what you know about.
Yeah.
We're always going to be more nervous if it's something we've just heard about,
Yeah.
if it's something that we don't know a lot about. But if you have a whole 30 years of experience in health and fitness, you have a deep well to choose from. That does become the challenge later sometimes, is like, of all of that, what is the one thing that this audience needs to hear at this point this year?
And honestly, Miaja Liisa is coaching me, and we were grappling with that for a while. We were going back and forth, but what do we really need? But what do we really need?
Yes.
And you had a whole script that was excellent for that too.
Yeah, I have an exercise put through, like, you've got to think, like, what do they need? Why is it important to them? And why is it important that they hear it today? And what is actionable about it? Don't just inspire them or motivate them. Let's not be the, like the type of message that's been in the locker room in between halftime for the last 100 years, like the rah-rah, like something you can really do because of it. Like Simon Sinek, to bring it back to talk about the student who did that. Simon Sinek's message, his short one is, start with why.
Yeah.
And so I can hear just that phrase and my mind can come up with it. I don't have to be told, here's the 12-point plan of how you start with why. I can choose to do that, But just the whole thought is people don't care what you do or how you do it. They care why you do it.
I think they care why you do it and if it's a results-based why. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, absolutely. Mhm. Yeah, what's
so
in it? It's always what's in it for them. Yes,
yeah.
it's back to my website. There is one. I have the top 10 things that a TEDx organizer or TEDx coach is looking for. I also have one of application fails. So when someone wants to give a TEDx talk, and maybe someone listening has actually applied and then not heard back and they don't know why. And one of those 7 tips is the one I just mentioned about the locker room. So I'm going to put here in that private chat for you then to pass over. That
You
come
know,
over.
that's one thing, even dating back to the days that I kind of thought I wanted to dabble in being an actress in like my 20s. And one of the things that I noticed, even with the agents that I had, none of them, you got no feedback from the audition. You just got like, oh, you're in or you're out. That was the one thing that freaked me out. Like,
Mhm.
nothing, you're not going to tell me anything. And
Yep.
B, your agent won't even tell you that. Like so
Wow.
unless you can nail it down for yourself, continually improve,
Mhm.
then you're going to hear crickets. But the better you get, the more you practice, the more you see other people's success, the better off you are. So that's definitely
If
true.
you want to become a better speaker, you have to be open to asking and want to hear. I had one of the TEDx speakers that I coached come in to a group, and I told the group, now I want you to write down what is his idea at the end. And then I want you to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how is his delivery overall? And then is there some area where like, yes, keep that in your talk, or some area like, oh no, this is where I got confused.
Right.
So he got lots, I think there were 25 people in the audience. And so here there were some 6s and some 8s and some 8s and some 7s and some 9s and then there was a 2. And he said, I hated you at that moment. But I was going to get that 2 up to a 9 or something like that. So it really motivated him to look at it. The first question is like, if all 25 or sampling, like 5 or 6 are saying, yes, I think his one idea is this, then he's good.
Right.
But then it also is like, how do you deliver that in a way that's sticky, that's memorable, that
Yep.
that will stay with them.
Yep.
And so that's important as well.
Excellent.
And the back to Michael Jordan, it's telling something that they didn't remember. And the story, like no one cares about your story unless they can see themselves in it. And what I see about myself and Michael Jordan is the fact that he was willing to do a certain thing every day because he had faith. His mom had told him, this is what, if you put salt in your shoes every day and that you pray that you'll get taller, because he wasn't tall as a kid.
Oh,
And so
wow.
he had that faith. And that's what the salt for him in his shoes represented, was that he took action. He prayed about it. He learned basketball. He worked at it. We all can become great speakers, but we have to practice as
Yeah.
much as Michael Jordan. And that's his Air Jordan right there.
See, and I will challenge everyone out there to forget that moment when she held up the sneaker. I don't think anyone's going to forget that ever. Anyway, that was an awesome, awesome talk we had about how to present yourself well for your podcast, as well as go out on other stages and present yourself well that way as well. Any closing thoughts, Miaja Liisa?
Well, 95% of people are rejected from the TEDx stage. Do you remember the reason why, Nicole?
Oh, no.
Well, that's what the gift that I've given you. Here are 7 application fails to avoid. If you don't answer the question that they are asking in the way they're asking it, if you're thinking, oh, they need to know this about me and this about me and so forth. So every stage is a little bit different. They all want to know the same thing: is what's your idea? It's always about the idea. What will the audience take away from the idea? Will they think differently, feel differently, act differently in some way? Who are you? Like, do you have some expertise? And why should that message be heard today? But they might ask for a 2-minute video. They might ask for a one sentence written of it, and you have to say, what's the difference? Remember working on that application, like, oh, what do they want in the video versus what do they want it written? And if
Yeah.
you mix those up or do it wrong, you're going to get rejected.
Yes, regarding TEDx, everyone should know that there is a very specific format and formula that really, at first blush, you think, oh, I can just breeze through this. But really, they're asking something very specific. So you have to go back and get someone like Miaja Liisa to help coach you through that process. And that's the obvious piece of it. Like for us, like in the group, we've been working on this so long. It was like, yeah, that's a part of the rote knowledge, that's not like the discovery. But knowing that now, you have the opportunity to make it exactly what they do want. And I do think it makes you a stronger speaker overall. Even let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you just want a podcast. But what you end up doing when you go through this kind of coaching is that you start to realize how it can apply to your podcast, how it can make it better, stronger, have a more stickiness, as Miaja Liisa had said.
And I think in a podcast, there are, so many podcasts, and some are long and some are short. But I think when we just focus on one thing, you hear people talk about things, you think, I just want to go back to that one point. So why not have shorter ones that just talk about that, or segments at least that talk about that and talk about it well, and talk about what's in it for them instead of it being all about you.
Right.
And it is the TED style has blessed my life so much, and it's applicable whether you are applying for a job, whether you're doing a podcast, whether you're speaking on any stage, whether you're speaking on the TEDx stage where the format is required. And that is just focus on one thing and support it well in a way that's memorable and sticky and that they'll always remember.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you, Miaja Liisa. You're awesome in so many ways. And I so much appreciate your knowledge and your experience that you've brought to the group today. Hopefully we'll have some nice comments afterwards. If anyone has any questions for Miaja Liisa, you can always reach her at mlsspeaks.com, and we'll always, do I have that down there? I do, right?
No, you don't. It's in the beginning of the application one there. It's on mlspeaks.com is the TEDx, is where you'll get those TEDx application fails. Because I don't want you to fail. I want you to succeed. Yeah, I don't have you spell out my whole name because, as you can see, if you're watching this live or even the replay of my spelling of my name, Miaja Liisa is very unusual. It's a Finnish name. So my website is mlspeaks.com.
So I have it up here now, and anyone who needs to reach out to Miaja Liisa for further public speaking questions or would like a consultation, I don't know, do you do that sort of thing?
Yes, you bet. The ones for TEDx I call the red dot readiness assessment. So if you want to see if you're ready to take the red dot, then we can have a conversation and I can help you with that.
Excellent. Excellent. So looking forward to see what comes out of this, because I think you're a genius at what you do, and we'll look forward to more from Miaja Liisa in the future. Thank you, Miaja Liisa.
You're welcome.
All right. That being said, enjoy and love your mind, body, soul, and spirit, and know the truth of you is really about love and being present. Thank you. And we'll see you next time on podcast tutorial number 3. We're going to be talking about, I believe we're talking about lighting. So we'll enjoy that later. Okay. Bye.